Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero.
Prepare to be haunted by the story of Dennis Rader, the man who transformed from a trusted neighbor to one of the most notorious serial killers in history. This is 15-year-old Charlie Otero. On the morning of January 15, 1974, Charlie left for school early to study for a test. He had a loving family and a bright future ahead. That same night, all of it would be taken away, as he returned home and found his family murdered. 4 members of the Otero family were found bound, gagged, and strangled.
4 members of the Otero family were found bound, gagged, and strangled.
The investigators looked shaken. What they saw, that would shake anybody.
Fear spread quickly in the community. Doors and windows were locked tight.
We thought it was a one-off, a one-time deal. We were wrong.
Killer strangled Joseph first, using a cord he had brought with him. Julie was next. He strangled her with his hands, but when she struggled, he used a rope. Then he turned his attention to Joey, placing a plastic bag over his head and tightening it with a rope. Josephine, the last to die, suffered the most prolonged and horrific death. He took her to the basement, where he had prepared a noose. Binding her hands and feet, he hung her from a pipe. As she slowly suffocated, he took photographs, capturing the grotesque scene for his own twisted satisfaction. It was clear that this was no ordinary criminal. Fear spread like wildfire as people realized a cold, calculating killer was among them. On April 4th, 1974, just 2 miles from where Charlie Otero once lived, a bloodied 19-year-old man ran down the street, desperately pleading with passersby to call the police. "Help my sister," he begged. "Someone broke into our house and she's still there." When officers arrived at the scene, they discovered 21-year-old Catherine Bright bound with nylon stockings, struggling to breathe. She had been stabbed multiple times. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Catherine succumbed to her injuries.
Initially, the Bright murder was not associated with the Otero killings. There were not a lot of similarities in the method of killing.
Catherine Bright had been stabbed, but the Otero family had been strangled. We noticed that the nylon stockings were tied with square knots, such as had been seen at the Otero crime scene.
In both crime scenes, the telephone line was cut prior to entry.
That wasn't enough to actually connect those 2 cases.
Nonetheless, police created a composite sketch of the killer with Kevin's assistance, having seen the perpetrator up close. The sketch was distributed to every news outlet in Kansas, leading to thousands of tips flooding in, but no solid leads emerged. December 1977, police receive a letter from the killer himself. "How many people do I have to kill before I get my name in the paper?"
Exclusive details, a new communication that could be from the killer.
A letter was discovered inside a book at the Wichita Public Library. It was addressed to the editor of the Wichita Eagle and described the Otero murders in graphic detail. The letter was typed and signed with the initials BTK, which stood for bind, torture, kill. In it, BTK took credit for the murders and provided information that only the killer could know. This letter introduced BTK to the world. He indicated that he was a serial killer to be, and threatened to continue to kill, since investigators are unable to trace the author of the letter. The man who calls himself BTK disappears, and for the rest of 1974, no one hears a word from the killer. On March 17, 1977, BTK struck again.
Call from a man who says a little boy just came knocking at my door saying, "My mom is dead, my mom is dead, call police, a man killed my mom."
Officers rushed to the boy's home, where they found a woman lying lifeless in her bed.
She was found with a bag over her head, tied with a ligature around her neck.
The woman was identified as Shirley Vian, a single mother of 3. Her 5-year-old son, Steve, had witnessed the horrific event and sought help from a neighbor.
In my mind, I was 5, but I was 6 years old. Just turned 6. My mom, she was sick in bed. Sent me block up the road for a can of soup, you know. And on my way back, man stops me. Shows me a picture. woman and child.
Police now have 3 homicides: the Oteros, Catherine Bright, and Shirley Vian. BTK has become a serial killer just like he promised. In January of 2004, after 13 years of silence, the whereabouts of the serial killer known as BTK remained a mystery. The media marked the 30th anniversary of BTK's first murder with various stories, and it was rumored that someone was writing a book about the case. This development did not sit well with BTK. He despised the idea of someone else telling his story and gaining publicity for the murders he committed.
BTK did not like that at all. He did not like that there was someone else writing his story. There was someone else getting publicity for the murders that he wanted credit for.
That evening, news broke with exclusive details about a new communication that appeared to be from BTK.
And good evening, we have exclusive details, a new communication that could be from the serial killer BTK.
Breaking his silence after 25 years.
Serial killer apparently has resurfaced.
Wichita Police Department on Friday received information. The Wichita Eagle received a letter.
The letter contained Vicky Wegerle's driver's license, which investigators had never recovered, and shocking photographs of Vicky Wegerle.
So Vicky Wegerle on her floor in her bedroom is determined were not taken by anyone in law enforcement, they were taken by the killer.
Everyone was in shock. No way, there's no way this is true. It can't be that he's still around.
When they examined the return address on the letter, it read Bill Thomas Kilman, BTK. In the following months, BTK continued to send a series of communications to the media, including letters, puzzles, and even a plastic doll wrapped in bondage, eerily reminiscent of his victims. Investigators become more and more present in the news, sharing facts about the case, giving BTK the publicity he wants, all the while trying to appeal to his ego. Between March 2004 and January 2005,
it was very shocking to see a doll with the exact same bondage from 30 years before.
As the FBI told us early in this investigation, if you can keep him communicating, he will make a mistake.
The following facts about BTK are being made available to the public in hopes of identifying BTK.
On January 25th, the investigation takes a shocking turn. The latest letter is found in a cereal box, left at a Home Depot parking lot. Inside, the killer writes to police that he now wants to change his communication method.
BTK asked police, can you trace a floppy disk? Please be honest.
This guy thought that we wouldn't lie to him because we were enjoying things as much as he was.
Well, law enforcement was not honest.
They say, no, it cannot be traced.
To respond to the killer, police need to post a message through the classified ads. The response was to be, relax, it will be okay. Just days later, a floppy disk arrived at the Wichita Police Department from BTK. Forensic experts immediately analyzed the disk, quickly uncovering the software registration to a user named Dennis and an organization called Christ Lutheran Church.
Went to, I think it was a Google search, and found Christ Lutheran Church, and when he clicked on the officers, there was a picture of a man named Dennis Rader.
We think it can't be this simple. Maybe this is a setup.
Dennis Rader was president of his church. He was a compliance officer for the city of Park City.
We've been tracking it down. The dogs are somewhat territorial as well as vicious.
He was living a normal life.
He was a Cub Scout leader. He's out there not only using knots, but he's teaching people how to tie square knots.
He worked for ADT, the alarm company. He's in your house installing the alarm system, and he's a serial killer.
And then we drove to Park City as fast as we could. There was a black Jeep Cherokee in the driveway.
They placed him under 24-hour surveillance as they meticulously built their case against him. BTK is Dennis Rader. On February 25, 2005, police arrest Dennis Rader on his way home for lunch in Park City, as he's faced with the investigators, who finally caught him, the serial killer who terrorized the state of Kansas. For the last 30 years is stunned.
Landwehr pulls up in a Ziploc evidence baggie with the purple floppy disk in it. He slides it in front of Rader and says, "You know what this is?" Dennis Rader starts poking his finger forcefully on this floppy disk. And he says, "I got a question."
I need to ask. Sure, do I? How can you lie?
Rader thought that Landwehr was doing this for the fun of it, that they had a good thing going.
How can you lie?
Because I was trying to catch you.
The BTK murder mystery may be nearing an end.
That's right. Wichita police and city leaders confirming today that a person of interest taken in for questioning yesterday is in fact BTK.
The bottom line, BTK is arrested.
Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero, proceeded to tie her up, bag over head and strangled her. The kids were really banging on the door, hollered, screaming.
I believe most women in Wichita were very emotional that day because we really didn't believe it would never happen again. And you're like, we're finally safe. We're finally safe.